Hello, everybody. It's been 5 months officially since the last podcast episode. Apologies, as always. It's kind of now a catchphrase at the start of every podcast episode that I eventually do upload, which is just an apology for the length of time between episodes. But I'm sure you've been filling the void with my YouTube channel, occasional uploads on there too, on the anti-social media channel. There's been no reason, really, apart from laziness and busyness, the combination of the two, really. But here we are. Today, I'm not going to talk about the far right and conservatives and YouTube bigots like Sargon of Akkad and Count Dankula, who are running for European members of Parliament in the forthcoming May elections in the UK/Europe. And I'm going to do a podcast about them specifically and why the hell are they destroying a political party just to get YouTube views? And why is the boss of UKIP, Gerard Batten, allowing that to happen? It's very strange. I shall investigate further in the next week or two, hopefully. But until then, I'm going to be very self-indulgent and talk about comics, in particular, comic-based films, comic-based films featuring the Avengers, in particular, Endgame. So this podcast episode is going to be very, very spoiler-heavy. If you haven't seen the film and you don't want any of it ruined for you, what the hell are you doing listening now? I literally put it on the title. There are spoilers everywhere. Now go away and do something else and then come back to this podcast. And, the idea is to have a discussion in the comments section below, especially if you're watching/listening on YouTube, because nobody that I know has seen the film yet. Only I have. I've got no one to talk to about it. I'm literally sat on my own in the quiet part of a car park in Britain, talking to my phone, hoping that somebody will listen to this and then comment about it, because I need to talk to someone about it, for crying out loud. This is my life, okay? I was thinking about this in depth recently. 3 things I liked as a child, which were very unpopular, or at least weren't very well known or weren't very good things, are now massive in the UK particularly, but also across the world. And those things were Marvel Comics and my desire for them to make at least a cartoon version of a Marvel sort of Spider-Man or whatever that was actually good and watchable and wasn't just for children. That has happened now, Enter the Spider-Verse, which I haven't seen yet. But of course, up until that point, they've made live-action movies and they have blown us away with them. And it's everything I could have wanted from my childhood into my adulthood. I cannot believe we are in this time zone thing now where that has become a reality, where people used to wear spandex and pretend to climb up buildings, and CGI wasn't a thing. And even when CGI was a thing, it was shit, apart from maybe Jurassic Park. That broke the mold. But even after Jurassic Park, CGI was generally crap, unless the film was a humongous budget, right? And Marvel have thought, well, let's give it a go, put some effort into it, really actually do something for the fans. And here we are, 11 years later, 22, films later, and it's just amazing. The other thing was American football, the NFL. I, as a kid, an 8-year-old kid, for some reason decided to watch that as my first sport. And now it's very, very popular in the UK and, of course, across the world. It always kind of was in America, but and the other one is a football team called Tottenham, who have been shit for years. I've been following them, and now they're amazing. And I'm like, what else can I touch from my childhood to make great? And the answer wasn't women's attraction to me. That still is at the same level as my entire life, which is minimal. But let's move on to the film. I've made a lot of notes here. And basically, this is going to be essentially a spoiler-heavy comedy-style review of the film, because I'd say the film is 4.5 stars out of 5. Yeah, I really wanted to give it 5 stars, but it's almost perfect, but not quite. There are a few holes, a few issues, a few plot holes, a few confusing bits in the film. Classic old school, comics based. Remember in like the Batman films, the original ones from DC, there are always bits in them that you're like, well, I liked the Joker bit, but the bit at the end when he's got the bat like sonar radar thing going on, just just cut that bit out of the movie and it would be a 5-star movie, but they did it anyway, didn't they? You know? Or just have Joker on the screen all the time rather than Batman's doing his voice, you know? But, you know, it's almost perfect. There are some confusing bits, but I think the confusing bits, the plot holes, the stuff that doesn't quite make a lot of sense, I think that adds to the fun, right? If it was genuinely annoying for all of the plot holes and et cetera, then yeah, that score will drop down to 4 or 3 stars. But it's still strong scoring because of the weird bits, okay? I hope that makes sense. My Avengers prediction of what would happen in Endgame was off. If you'd listened to watched previous videos I've made about a year ago now, I did a prediction for Endgame immediately after I watched Infinity Wars. And I took it very seriously. That prediction was as follows. Hawkeye comes back, because he wasn't in the first film there, Infinity Wars, and he teams up with Ant-Man, who comes out of the quantum realm. They're the only ones left, really. You know, Cap's around, we know Black Widow's around, but, you know, we've got a team up of 2 people who weren't in the first movie, you know, taking up the whole of the second film of Endgame, and they become friends, and they hatch up this cunning plan where Hawkeye hunts down Thanos, and he catches him unawares. Thanos is just bending down to pick up the gauntlet from the floor, or like from a table or whatever, and Ant-Man quickly jumps aboard Hawkeye's arrow. You know, obviously very tiny, he shrunk down. Obviously that's the only way that makes sense. I probably should have set it up a little bit better than that, so I wouldn't have to explain that bit, but there you go. Tiny Ant-Man on Hawkeye's arrow, which is fired directly into Thanos' anus. Meanwhile, Ant-Man, who's now inside Thanos' anus, grows to the size of Giant Man, completely blowing Thanos apart. End of film, lots of guts and poo from Thanos everywhere. Now, turns out, they didn't go with that idea. Not sure why. It's pretty plausible. You know, the film's over in about a second, but the fun is in hunting down Thanos and fighting bad guys that they'd have to just sort of make up on the spot. I haven't thought it through, so that didn't happen. But I will say that Ant-Man is in the film a lot, as well as Thor and Hawkeye. They make use of the people who generally weren't in the first movie. And I've got to say, hands down, Paul Rudd, but especially Chris Hemsworth, 2 of the finest comedy actors I think I've ever seen. They've only got a limited amount of lines as there's so many characters to cover, but everything they say in the film and films in general is just gold. You know, there's a reason why Ghostbusters wasn't completely shit, and that was Chris Hemsworth. I know that sort of goes against the feminist sort of message, girl power message of the film, but it was average. You know, I went to see it. It wasn't terrible. It was average, but you know, there were some funny bits, but it was mainly Thor who was good in it, wasn't he? That was the best bit. And I am delighted at the ending of the film when he climbs into the Guardians of the Galaxy ship, and it looks like he's going to be in at least one future movie. That just made me cream my pants. It was like, you know, Cap's over, Iron Man's over. Thank God, the best of all of them is still going to be in other films, and he's going to be alongside Chris Pratt, Quayle, and it's going to just their chemistry we had a little teaser in the previous movie, and of course at the end of this movie, how their chemistry is or isn't going to work. And here comes the plot hole number 1. It's possibly a memory issue rather than a plot hole. Gamora, she wasn't on that ship. I'm pretty sure Gamora wasn't on that ship. Did she die in the last snap because she was part of Thanos' thing? I can't remember. Yeah? I need to see that film a second time because of a few things I missed. Namely being, I'm going to go see the movie again, right? Because I couldn't quite hear what Stan Lee said in his cameo in the film when they went back in time. I didn't get the one word that everyone else laughed. But it was like there was a revving engine when he was on the screen, and I couldn't quite... So I'm going to essentially see the film again, because I missed a sentence at the most that Stan Lee said. That's how much of a Marvel fan / idiot I am, okay? Please, take £15 plus whatever it costs for popcorn, and I'm going to get a beer, because I go to good cinemas. Take 25 quid, so I can see a man who is dead, saying a word that I didn't quite hear, and if I don't catch it the second time, damn it, I'm going to see that film 3 times, alright? Actually, that's a good point I want to make. Deadpool, I think Deadpool and maybe Ant-Man were the last 2 Marvel movies that I definitely wanted to see again immediately after they finished. You know, that the fanboy in me was going mad. I have to see these films again in the next few days, right? Infinity War as well. Of course, that is actually literally the last movie where that happened, but it's been happening less recently. For example, I watched Spider-Man and enjoyed it, but I held off until the DVD came out and to actually own it. You know, I know a lot of people don't own DVDs or even, I suppose, Blu-rays anymore. But I'm one of those geeks who will own something that I really like. So, you know, if I occasionally read a comic online, I feel bad about it. If I'm just checking it out to see what it's like, and then end up reading quite a few. If usually a series of comics is 6 issues, if I read 3 of them, I don't then think, well, I'll read the rest for free. I'll stop, make a little note, go on Amazon or whatever and buy the graphic novel, the trade of it, so I can keep it, because I know it's going to be, hopefully, end up being a good storyline. Anyway, that's slightly going away from the point. So Stan Lee bit, that's incredible. And also on the same subject, there wasn't an actual tribute to Stan Lee, which I did find surprising in a way, but at the same time, it's the end of 11 films. 22 films, 11 years. It's the end, the culmination of all the callbacks in the film. Everything that's happened, you know, they literally went back to moments in time that were massive in the Avengers history and Thor's history and whatnot. And now it's the end. It would be strange for them to suddenly stop everything and have a 5-minute Stan Lee tribute. I think that's going to come in future movies, or they'll just have a standalone Stan Lee tribute on the new Disney thing that they've got going on, where all the Marvel, you know, they have to have a other selling point. They can't just put the Marvel films in there. They will sell on that alone, but you know, we can all download that stuff. You have to have stuff that's original on there, so there'll be, you know, like new Punisher, new Daredevil, new Jessica Jones, all that Netflix stuff, and then like Stan Lee documentaries, and you know, there's plenty of archives that they can delve into that we haven't seen online. You know. Anyway, again, I'm going away from the point. So here's my major plot point, my major issue with the film in a comedy way, okay? Because if this film was set in our reality, okay, if it's based on superheroes in our reality, which we know it's not, but let's imagine it is, right? We are told again and again and again and again, right? If a significant amount of bees are wiped out, and there's nothing to carry around the pollen and things to germinate the plants or whatever, however the fuck it... I'm no scientist, right? But we know that if bees aren't around, the entire human race ceases to exist. Animals, that we get an Endgame Infinity Wars snap of the fingers from bees not existing anymore. That's how climate change should set itself, as people turning into ash and drifting away. It's not accurate scientifically. Doesn't make any sense scientifically, but it now links in to what we know as popular culture, right? And it wakes a few people up. If they really wanted to push that idea across, they could sell it like that, and a lot of people will be like, "Oh, that's stupid. It's a film. You can't. It's no basis on reality." And the rest of us are like, "Fuck you, my friend. Climate change is Thanos, and we are Captain America. Let's get this done, okay?" So, slightly. But no, seriously, if all the bees die, well, half the bees die, 50% of all life on Earth dies, I think we'll be in a lot more trouble. It'll be like The Road, the film The Road, with, I want to say Viggo Mortensen in it, and that kid. Yeah? I might be wrong. I'm on my phone. I can't Google anything. That will be like what Endgame would be like if it was accurate and there were only half the amount of bees. Alright? Maybe exaggerated slightly, but you see my point. Okay, I love the fact that they did the young Howard Stark and the young Hank Pym, Michael Douglas thing again. I love it when they do that thing that makes them look young. Okay, they did it with Nick Fury in the last film. By the way, slight side point: Nick Fury and Captain Marvel, that was a buddy movie, and it looks like they're doing exactly the same thing for Spider-Man: Far Away From Home. I think it's called, isn't it? That's right, isn't it? Have we got that right? Far From Home, where Nick Fury turns up and mentors and, is palling around. It's like Scooby-Doo adventure, where Nick Fury is Shaggy. I haven't thought that analogy through, but yeah, I like it. They thought, well, that worked once. Let's just do it again in the very next standalone superhero film. I mean, he might only be in the film for a small amount. Let's be honest, but I do like the brazenness of that. Now, let's talk. I've been talking for 15 minutes. I'm going to try and keep this relatively brief, 20, 25 minutes. Let's talk about reactions, okay? Now, the big part of the film, the main part of the film, was when Cap showed us all that he was worthy. Now, I didn't make any noises when that happened. Everything that happened to me was internal. I maybe slightly gasped. I certainly smiled. The fucking hairs on up on the back of my arm. It was incredible. It was fanboy heaven. Exactly. You try explaining that to a non-comics fan, a non-Marvel fan. What happened in your big film that you've been waiting all these years for, comics fan man? Well, non-fan. Someone with an A on his forehead to symbolise America, and a flag wrapped around his, sort of in his clothes, wrapped around his chest area, his torso. Captain America, yeah, that's right, yeah. He picked up a hammer. Really? That's what you've been waiting all these years for? Yep, picked up a hammer. Waited around a bit. Won't lie, a bit of lightning came out, quite exciting. Oh, lightning. Hammer. Good. Try explaining it to someone. It's very difficult, Obviously, everyone knows about the characters now, so it's slightly easier, but you get my point. That reaction in the cinema, people gasping and cheering and clapping and just being so happy, that's why going to the cinema is fun again. It's expensive and all this kind of bollocks, but the cinema is popular. Make cinema great again is what the Russo brothers and what's his name, Joss Whedon and all those people were thinking when they first made these movies. We're gonna make people go and see the same film twice, if not 3 times, if not more than that, based on the fact that we're just gonna make fans happy, and the audiences, general audiences and critics will come along with us because Marvel comics are great, and people just aren't aware of this. It's not just for kids, guys. Anyway, he picks up the hammer. It's amazing. Big old battle with Cap. I like the fact that Captain Marvel... Look, I've been saying all along, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Captain Marvel is showing DC, the DCU, the DC Cinematic Universe, how to make a Superman film. She's got almost exactly the same powers as Superman, but she's more fallible. As you can see when she tore through that spaceship, Thanos' ship, that was really, really good visually. Here comes... And then, of course, it's a bit weird because Thanos then sort of slaps her about a bit and she falls down, and that's that. So she's great at all the big visual stuff and having power and lasers and shit coming out of her. But, in a fist fight, she's not too tidy. Classic woman. Hey, guys? And... yeah, that reaction, all those reactions were just amazing. And having Spidey come back out of the portal, which still makes no sense. I'm sure they'll explain it in future movies, and we're all going to gloss over that for now, right? We're just going to gloss over the fact that Doctor Strange brought them all back at a drop of a hat, right? We're just going to wait for the next couple of movies for that. Probably the Doctor Strange movies when we'll find out. It could be a year or 2 away now. We'll have to wait. And then all these theories will come out, and we're fine with that, aren't we? We're all good with that, right? And Spider-Man, when he came out of nowhere, and the what I call the spider claws came out of his back. Now, those claws, I'm sure we all know, comics fans, are based upon the original Civil War comic books, which I believe, from memory, were by Mark Miller. Those were featured in his Iron Spider suit. Very brief appearance for them. Before Civil War sort of eventually became weird and they had to reverse the timeline because Peter Parker's identity was out. Anyway, read it. It's very good up until that point. But the main bulk of if you've never read the actual original Civil War, the main bulk of it is pretty damn good in my opinion and worth a read. Now, when the claws came out of his back, as I call them, the tentacles, whatever you want to call them, and they started essentially killing or stabbing the aliens, the Chitauri or whatever he was fighting at the time. That was just incredible, and I was like, I need to see more of that in future films. So it's weird that we saw the trailer for Far From Home before the film. We've all seen it anyway, and he's wearing just like the original Spider-Man suit from the first film. We're told it's set moments after Infinity War finishes, but he's wearing the old suit, and indeed he just leaves it at home and just wears other suits. There's no Spider-Man with the claws and the tentacles coming in a new film, and I was like, kind of want to see that, guys. So, fingers crossed. Thor, right? Thor, when he went to he was the star of the film. Him, Fat Thor, right? The references to the Big Lebowski were pretty obvious and just looked great. It makes me want to go home now and watch the Big Lebowski again. I mean, imagine in the future if Thor doesn't lose weight and he just starts smoking joints all the time and goes bowling. Oh, it's so incredible. Anyway, I keep getting away from the point. One of the plot holes I found was that when Thor went to Asgard and met his mum, Greta, I think it is, a lovely chat, a bit teary-eyed when I watched that, and basically he holds his hand out and the hammer flies back into his hand. Lovely bit of the film there. Also, he has 2 weapons now, which is even more exciting. And, everything's back to normal, Thor-wise, but I can't remember, because that is based, when he goes back in time, that's based on Thor 2, isn't it? The Dark World, when the ether is in Jane Foster, right? Who's credited in the film in the credits, even though I'm pretty sure she didn't do any acting for the film. They just used old footage. Anyway, that's beside the by. He's got the hammer, and he fucks off with the hammer, right? He goes back into the present with the hammer. Now, the Thor of that time is then left without a hammer. So how can he complete the film without Mjolnir? Eh? How can he do it without the hammer? It doesn't make any. That doesn't make any. We're just supposed to just accept that, and that's fine, and I will accept it. In fact, I literally only say it on a podcast that about 100 people would listen to, just because no one's seen the film and I need to talk to someone about it. But it doesn't make sense for the earlier films. Also, the Tesseract thing, when they took it away from Loki, the imprisoned Loki the second time, but it's all very confusing. They were right. When you add time travel to a film, it invites plot holes and confusion. And I was there thinking for too long. Surely it doesn't make the earlier films make any sense now. Doctor Strange, yeah, cheeky little shit, eh? Yeah, just holding your finger up there, waggling it along before. I like the ending of the film where Tony gets the Infinity Stones. I thought that was quite a clever way of doing it. I thought it was simple. I thought in the comics nowadays, when you've got these big storylines that are inevitably a disappointment, they had another Infinity Wars thing recently. I bought all the comics without reading them individually, and then tried to read them in bulk in the end. And none of it made any sense. Spoiler alert: Gamora killed Thanos in the comics. Similar way to the way Thor killed him in Infinity Wars in Endgame at the start of the movie by chopping his head off, and that was it. That was at the start of the comics, like a 6-comic arc, and then none of it made any sense after that. And I was like, why do they keep doing this to us? But in the film, in Endgame, it was really simple. The Stark nanotech technology essentially nicked the Infinity Stones from Thanos, who was wearing Stark-based nanotechnology glove anyway. So it's just pretty sure they wouldn't have done that. They would have made it enormously complicated in the comics nowadays, and that's you got people saying, "Oh, SJWs have ruined comics." Trolls who are idiots who just want to complain and cry about something as an adult. But what's killed comics in a way is all these big crossover events that generally don't make any sense, and it's so annoying because they often get really great comics writers involved, and they know their hands are tied, and you're just thinking when you're reading it, why did you do this? Because You've got to include all these characters. You can't just focus on one or two, and this story doesn't make any sense, or it's just inevitably always ends up being a disappointment because characters can't die, and if they do die, they just come back about a month later, which is why at the end of Endgame, I was seriously nonplussed by Sam picking up the shield, the Falcon picking up the shield and becoming the next Captain America, because obviously that's happened fairly recently in the comics. And apart from racists and bigots going mad about it, real proper comics fans, honestly, I'd say from the bottom of my heart, certainly this is my opinion, and what I think the opinion across the board is, no one gives a shit if Steve Rogers isn't Captain America. If he's dead, and he never will die, but if he is dead in the comics, he was an old man for a period of time, which is exactly the same sort of reason that Sam became Cap. But no one wants a replacement Cap. That doesn't work in the comics. No one wants a replacement Wolverine, okay? So whilst X-22, I might have got that wrong from memory, I'm not a massive X-Men fan. I used to buy them quite a lot, but I'm not too interested in modern day X-Men, and no one wants a new Wolverine, okay? They've got various characters with adamantium claws. I reckon, I'm speaking for all of them here, no one gives a shit about them, yeah? It's just a way to sell comics when you've killed off a character and you're like, fuck, these comics aren't selling anymore, let's make an identical character who's somehow more annoying. So, I don't care about Falcon in future films. But thing is, right, that's good. Because what Marvel are going to do is prove me wrong. I and loads of other people will be like, oh, Cap's not in it anymore. I'm not really too bothered by it. And they put other characters in the standalone Falcon/Captain America films of the future, and the storyline will be great. And Anthony Mackie, is that his name? McKay? I'm never really good at remembering everyone's names, actors' names, but he won't be shit at acting in these future films. His slightly woodenness will become endearing, won't it? In the same way that Cap, Steve Rogers, Chris Evans, not that one, Chris Evans, he is a bit wooden at times, but we accept it because he's the big hero, and all he needs to do is make us believe that Sam Wilson is a big hero, that Falcon, that the new Captain America is a big hero, and you just ignore his stupid manicured, no, that's not right, his stupid beard that he has at the end of the film, his distracting beard that takes you away from that glorious old man Cap moment. Old man Cap will feature in the future films, even if it's brief, and it'll be like, oh, that's enough, I'm now on board, and everything, I'll forget all of this sort of, I don't know, just lackluster feeling about the future movies that I just sort of got from that one old Cap bit. But because the future Guardians films are going to be incredible, there's just no way around it. James Gunn is back, and Thor's in them. It's already going to be good. Let's talk about tears. I try and avoid every single spoiler. Now, as I'm talking at the end of this podcast episode, a steam train has just arrived at the station next to the supermarket, because for some reason we've gone back in time in an Avengers way. I don't know if you can hear the steam. Can you hear that? Yeah, I have no idea what's going on, but talking about going back in time, there's a fucking steam train just going past. Anyway, crying in the film. Now, I try and avoid looking at anything online 48 hours before a Marvel film, because inevitably in another country it'll be released slightly earlier, or there'll be a review allowed a few days before the film is officially out. And even if I'm one of those idiots that even if they say the film is 100% good, I'm like, don't tell me it's 100% good. Allow me to make my own mind up about how good or bad it is. I know it's going to be good. I just want to witness it on my own and then make a judgment, okay? And that is that those people are pricks, and I'm one of them. I'm a twat like that, okay? But I did see a BBC thing said it's spoiler-free first reactions to the film, and the only reaction that I read was from Twitter, and it said some tear-jerking moments. I cried 5 or 6 times immediately I was like, don't tell me how many times I'm going to cry. Allow me to get emotional on my own, right? And then it said there are a few, it's almost perfect film with a film. Almost perfect film with a few hiccups, which is essentially the same as my review right here, okay? And don't tell me that. That's essentially a spoiler. I don't want any information whatsoever, even if it's good or bad. And so stupidly, I made that mistake. And I went into the cinema nervous, yeah? Because it's 11 years of this. It's all culminating into one. Can't speak English. I'm genuinely excited about this, but also I don't want those people to influence my enjoyment of this film. I'm an idiot for that, right? And I didn't cry 5 or 6 times. I welled up once, but no tears, and got close to it when Thor was talking to his mum as well. And that moment where I welled up was obviously when Tony Stark died. But more importantly, Peter Parker's reaction to Tony Stark dying. Him breaking down, him just, their connection. He made him Spider-Man in this universe. He is Iron Man. He's a hero and he's gone. And Parker's reaction to that was, my lip was wobbling like a motherfucker, And I was like, oh God, here come the waterworks. And because we almost immediately moved on from that scene, I wasn't really in floods of tears. But I'll be honest with you, dear listener, I wanted to be crying my eyes out at that film because I am the kind of person who will watch a Marvel film and something that happened in that Marvel film that is exactly the same as the comics. It is a true to life, or true to fiction in this case, replica of what I know from childhood through to now will happen in a film. And I remember when in the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films and in the Tobey Maguire, specifically Spider-Man films, where he's swinging through New York. That's the first instance of Spider-Man CGI that really worked. And he lands on that flagpole in a certain stance where he sort of, his hands and feet are on that flagpole. He's standing in a certain way, looking out over America. And I went, oh my God, this is everything to me. This is everything. And I just burst into tears in the cinema. Luckily, it was quite quiet. But I'm there, just tears running down my face, so happy. That's how much of a geek I am. And I know other people listening to this now who are geeks like me would have had a similar feeling. And it happens again and again and again in these films. And, that's what I wanted to witness in Endgame. It didn't happen. Recognition of something didn't happen because we've had 11 years of it already. So maybe they've, done as much as they can. But I also wanted to cry because of deaths, which were inevitable, and, emotional things. And I didn't quite get there either, which is another reason why it doesn't quite get 5 stars. I'm going to wrap up now and just say the last plot point, which is a big one. And I think, this is a confusing one. I want answers down below in the comments section. I want your opinions on this especially. When Ant-Man came back from the quantum realm, it was 5 years later. Cassie, who in the previous Ant-Man films, his daughter, is, I don't know, from memory, I'm guessing she's about 7 or 8 years old, right? Way before puberty. Yeah, she's a child. And then when he comes back, she looks about 15, 16, 17, 18, certainly it's become pubic, as it were. But we're led to believe it's 5 years. We'll take that one on the chin. 5 years has passed. She's 5 years older, even though she does look considerably older than that. Peter Parker comes back from somewhere. We don't quite know where yet. And it is also 5 years later, I believe, for him. It would make no sense if it wasn't. And he, goes back to school. He hasn't aged a day. Ned hasn't gone on a diet in those... His best friend has not gone on a diet in those 5 years that has passed. They're still at school. Why are they still at school? Am I just being really stupid? Am I unable to understand the ending of Endgame? Do I need a bit of help here? Is it staring me in the face? Am I going to be embarrassed that I don't understand what happened there? Could someone please tell me what the fuck happened? Why Cassie is older, but Parker is still going to school. How long is school in America? I know they have like a sixth form scenario. We have sixth form in Britain. Not a lot of people take up on it. You do 5 years at school, you fuck off. They have sixth form in some areas of school here where you stay on till, let's say, 18 or 19, something like that. Whereas normally you'd leave school about 15 or 16. That's the same principle in America across the board, right? But, Parker must have been about 15 in the original Spider-Man film. He's definitely not 20, 21 now. He's not at university stage, is he? Because, what's going on at the end? Someone explain that ending to me. Just that particular bit at the end, okay? Thank you. Thank you for listening, very much for listening. I intended this to be 10, 15 minutes of me rambling, because I've only written a small amount of notes here, and it ended up being 35 minutes, and of course the limit to these podcasts is 45. I'm not going to take that whole limit, I don't think. You might hear a song at the end, but there you go. Thank you very much for listening. I know this is different from the normal podcast. I know it's self-indulgent. I know it's incredibly geeky, but there's going to be a hell of a lot of you who are now on board with Marvel who weren't on board with Marvel 10 years ago, and this particular universe that they have, and that's what makes me happy, Everybody is now a fan of something that only geeks, sad individuals were a fan of in the past. If I ever told people I was reading comics at the age of 13, 14, 15, I would have been laughed at by a lot of people, They're for kids. It's just people in fucking spandex. Doesn't make any sense. Fuck you, guys. Look at what's happened, 20 years down the line. It's now the biggest thing in the world. That's annoying to a lot of people that only superhero movies come out. But for someone like me, I recognise there are too many superhero films, but for someone like me, I'm lapping it up still, 10 to 15 years after the superhero films started really flying at us, if you pardon the expression. So, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you have listened to all of this, because these are my real deep thoughts about Infinity Wars and Endgame, and I really want your reactions. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, pop down below and just leave your comments. Hopefully you've been leaving comments as I've been talking. That's I don't normally agree with that, people leaving comments as they're watching a video, but in this case I am going to take those all on board, and I'm going to try and reply to everybody and have a good old discussion in the comments section below. I hope I haven't spoiled anything for people who haven't seen the film, but you're an idiot for listening up until this point if you haven't seen it. Please subscribe to this. It's available on loads of different places: YouTube, SoundCloud, Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, blah, blah, blah. You'll find it somewhere. All the links are below in the description box of wherever you're listening to this. Remember, you can leave a comment on places other than YouTube if you want to get involved in this discussion. And if this discussion is great and I can make a follow-up podcast about this, I will. So bear that in mind. Your comments may be used for a future episode. Or maybe we'll leave it at that. Who knows? Let's find out. Go down below and let's have a good old nasher about Endgame. Thank you for listening. This is Anti-Social Media Podcast. Until next time, laters, baiters!